Michael Moore spent the weekend taking shots at American Sniper, allegedly. He says not so much, but he did talk about snipers on his Facebook, on his Twitter, and he has been just deluged with criticism as a result of that. So in the original post on his Facebook, he said, "Lots of talk about snipers this weekend, the holiday weekend of a great man killed by a sniper," referring to MLK Jr. "So I thought I'd weigh in with what I was raised to believe about snipers. My dad was in the 1st Marine Division in the South Pacific in World War II. His brother, my uncle, Lawrence Moore, was an Army paratrooper and was killed by a Japanese sniper 70 years ago next month. My dad always said snipers are cowards. They don't believe in a fair fight. Like someone coming up from behind you and cold cocking you. Just isn't right. It's cowardly to shoot a person in the back. Only a coward will shoot someone who can't shoot back." And so the timing is, of course, interesting. Now, as he points out, yes, it was right before MLK Jr., his day. He was killed by a sniper. But at the same time, lots of people are talking about the movie American Sniper, something that we've brought up a couple of times. Now, what's interesting is that the criticism Michael Moore is getting for what is perceived to be an attack on Chris Kyle, the American sniper.
Can we just pause for a brief second, John?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like Michael Moore, you know. But
I've enjoyed some of his movies.
Of course he's talking about American Sniper.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Let's just get past that. Like, you did lots of talk about snipers this weekend. Not unless you were talking about American Sniper, then there wasn't any talk about it.
Well, there's some other ways that snipers have come up to some extent.
But we
yes,
know that
he's talking about American Sniper.
Disingenuous. We know that's what he meant.
Now, so we've got a couple more tweets from him. We'll get to those very briefly, but it's interesting that he's getting criticized for this. You faced very similar criticism early on when you pointed out your view of snipers in relation to what you saw as Chris Kyle's sort of internal conflict about his lack of a frontline position in the Iraq conflict.
That's basically right. I mean, first of all, my opinion about snipers is irrelevant. What I was trying to talk about was something that I saw in the movie, which was that Chris Kyle, who's very eager to get down off his perch and get into the fight, at least the version of Chris Kyle that Bradley Cooper played, which is very different from what we know of Chris Kyle, that I saw this conflict of a guy who maybe himself thought, this isn't, I want to be down in it. I feel guilty that I'm sitting up here safer than they are down there. Not safe, but safer. And that played a role in his decision. And then factoring in the other part, which I thought was critical to the movie and why we're going to talk about the movie again on What to Flick on Thursday, because I really liked this movie. I gave it a 7. I feel like I'm going to kick it up to a 9. I thought it was an incredibly valuable, impressive film. But the Chris Kyle in the movie, very different than the Chris Kyle in life, but we're just reviewing the movie. And I thought, and I think what is a fair argument for us to have, and what Sarah Palin and Sean Hannity and all those people who rip Michael Moore are not interested in having, is the idea that I thought that character was saying, I murdered killed 160 people in war, enemies, or 250, whatever number you take, doesn't matter. They're both extremely high numbers. And then was essentially told by many people that this was a giant mistake, and we had made a horrible decision to go into Iraq, and that none of it was worth it. And that as human beings, we are not equipped to handle that. That the government says, do this, and you kill 160 people who don't see it coming. And then to be told afterwards, yeah, whoops, like that. And to me, that was a really interesting conflict. That's a conversation that I thought was interesting and worthy. And I can't believe there aren't snipers who don't feel that way. So that was really the extent of it. Michael Moore took it a little farther, but I think it's a relevant conversation.
Well, I haven't seen the movie myself. I'm not actually interested in seeing it. It's a little too close to home. I think that a lot of people who have family members in the military, this kind of is a Rorschach test. You know, it's like you go into it and see people coming out with their preconceived notions held intact. So, you know, I don't want to see it because that is just too close to me for members of my family that are active duty military. But I can see how at least there is one good thing that is coming out of this, and that we're talking about the reintegration of these military members into society and how difficult that is and what war actually does to people. Not just the snipers who have an admittedly extremely difficult job that I think
question.
you know is got to be
difficult
soul-wrenching
tactically
no matter what.
and difficult emotionally.
Oh
Right,
yeah,
right.
and there's no kind of help in getting them. Well, there's not that enough help, I should say. There is some help, but there's not enough help in getting them reintegrated into regular normal society and how they deal with the actions that they undertook. And I think this is a good film for
And just
that.
really quickly, even if there is, no matter how much help there is, they're going against a mountain of history and probably a significant amount of their own upbringing and way of thinking, that getting that help is somehow a sign of weakness all by itself. So even if the help is, even if there are people screaming from the mountaintop, we're here to help you, you got to get past the notion that you even, or that it's even manly enough to go in and take that help.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that we're having that conversation. I think as we show you some of the criticism that Michael Moore is receiving, understand that many of the people who are going to attack him as being unfair to the soldiers and say that they appreciate more than anyone else what the soldiers are doing, not necessarily the people pushing the most for those soldiers to receive help in reintegrating into society. But a few more of Michael Moore's quotes for context. He said, "My uncle killed by a sniper in World War II. We were taught snipers were cowards, will shoot you in the back. Snipers aren't heroes and invaders are worse." He then said, "But if you're on the roof of your home defending it from invaders who've come 7,000 miles, you are not a sniper. You are brave. You are a neighbor." And then he was countered by a couple of conservatives. Here's Newt Gingrich. "Michael Moore should spend a few weeks with ISIS and Boko Haram. Then he might appreciate American sniper. I am proud of our defenders." Sean Hannity said, "Hey, Michael, when snipers like Chris Kyle are saving American lives, that would be a good thing. Even an idiot like you can get that."
I'm glad he capitalized American, otherwise I wouldn't have known what he meant.
Exactly. Yeah. If some people like to capitalize just the A, I think they're not true patriots.
No, they don't. They hate America. Barack Obama just capitalizes the A.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And by the way, I liked Seth Rogen's tweet that he has since backed off of a little bit, but he said, "American Sniper kind of reminds me of the movie that's showing in the third act of Inglourious Bastards."
I'm going to defend Seth Rogen even a little bit from what you said. He's not really backing off. He's just recognizing that we live in a crazy world.
Yes,
he said something that is undeniably relevant and true. As soon as he said it, I'm like, yes, of course. It does. Parts of American Sniper feel like the third act of Inglourious Bastards, where for those who haven't seen it, where the German sniper, for Hitler and Goebbels, they make a propaganda film where he's just plucking Americans off, and it's ridiculous in a sense. And he just said it reminded him of that. He didn't say anything else except that it reminded him of it, but somehow everybody decided we'd have to interpret that as Seth Rogen's condemnation of the movie, and what he backtracked on was, all I was saying was what I said.
It's kind of
all I was saying was what I said.
And bear in mind that while they sort of make a joke in Inglourious Bastards of how many shots you have of that German soldier shooting Americans perceived, that's not nearly as many as Chris Kyle killed Iraqis, just for context. And then finally, Sarah Palin said, we always have to know what Sarah Palin thinks about this. "God bless our troops, especially our snipers." So even there, she seems to be, so she's mad at him for insulting the snipers. She is insulting everyone who's not a sniper because they are not as blessed by God. "Hollywood leftists, while caressing shiny plastic trophies that she would die to have, you exchange among one another while spitting on the graves of freedom fighters who allow you to do what you do. Just realize the rest of America knows you're not fit to shine Chris Kyle's combat boots. Does she know that he's dead? May the epic American sniper bring nothing but blessings to Taya and the children of this true American hero. Thank you, Bradley Cooper and Clint Eastwood, for respecting the United States military." Look, there's a lot of different aspects of this that we can talk about. I have a problem with the idea that you can't criticize any conflict because every conflict is about protecting our freedoms and our First Amendment rights. I defy you to make a connection between the efforts of American soldiers in Iraq and protecting Michael Moore's free speech rights in 2014. That does not exist.
The trophies aren't plastic, also.
Oh, they're not?
Well, come on. I mean, it's just really more of the culture war crap. I mean, it doesn't matter what Michael Moore would have said. He could have said it was the best movie ever, and I'm sure they would have found something to criticize about it. Basically, I think it was opportunistic on the part of most of these people. They seemed to have brought up, my awareness of this, they seem to be bringing it up before anyone else was really talking about it. It seemed like Fox News was already deciding, hey, the liberals are going to have a problem with this, before anybody actually really even knew what was going on. Maybe I missed something in the culture wars there, but it looked like this was sort of manufactured from the get-go.
Yeah, and I mean, and let's not...
And Michael Moore stepped into it, sure.
Right, and let's not leave Michael Moore out of it. he's been criticized by these guys before.
Yeah.
A few
He
times,
knew what
yes.
he knew what he was getting into, and I think expected it, and perhaps was looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the conversation is important. It's not a conversation that anybody on the right wants to have. By the way, American Sniper doing incredibly well. You know, made over $100 million this weekend, projected to earn, I think, $50 million this weekend. It's doing well everywhere. It's doing well in blue states, red states. It's doing well
Lots
with
of Oscar
everyone.
nominations.
Yeah, I mean,
So apparently
again,
liberals okay with nominating it for all these Oscars.
right, and then the notion,
Weird,
and
their
then
plot.
you see on Twitter, but it's Clint Eastwood who directed it, but it was Steven Spielberg who started the project. It was,
Yeah.
well, it was really Bradley Cooper who campaigned, which got thanked by Sarah Palin, who campaigned for Barack Obama. Like, none of that matters. And Clint Eastwood, yeah, he's a conservative. Clint Eastwood's not a stark raving lunatic. You know, he's a fairly thoughtful guy about war.
He looked a little bit crazy at the last RNC.
He did, but whatever. You know,
He's 84. What do you want?
he directed one of the best war movies I've ever seen, and this one is up there too, talking about Letters from Iwo Jima. I mean, really a great piece of film, and it's not a pro-war film, and neither is this. I don't think. I mean, I don't get that out of it. So you know, when you talk about preconceived notions, no question, people came in here with. I think it is.
And they come out of it with that.
Yeah, they go into it with him, and then merely reinforced it.
It does seem like that.
For
yeah.
me, it actually, you know, I'm not here. I'm such a thoughtful guy. I come out mixed about it. I think that's what you're supposed to. I find it, as much as I find Chris Kyle's book abhorrent, just horrible, and brings shame to America. That book, I think. I can't believe we asked him to do this in a conflict that we shouldn't have been in, and and he performed tremendous acts of bravery to protect his friends. We can't pretend that's not true.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I don't know if we
yeah.
literally asked him to kill 160 people. The fact that that stands out from all the other military snipers implies that he did something different.
It did.
Perhaps he was a little bit less discriminating in his target selection.
I don't know.
But I think I agree with you. I think in terms of the preconceived notions, I don't think many of the arguments going on about the movie have anything really to do with the movie. It's much more about the war, which people are
and about him.
always ready to relitigate, and about him. To me, it's about who we want to idolize as a country. And I think it's a very interesting choice to choose Chris Kyle, because not just because of what we can sort of speculate about him, but because of what we know literally about him from his own mouth. I mean, he like, we don't have to speculate that he was racially biased against people from that region. He said it. We don't have to speculate that he was bloodthirsty. He said that he was bloodthirsty. And we also know that he's a known liar. I mean, he was taken to court by Jesse Ventura. He lost that case, lying about how he had beaten up Jesse Ventura.
A super elaborate lie.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
And he doubled down on it on video.
Talking about killing people that stopped his car, talking about going to New Orleans to gun down people who were looting.
And let's not
He's a gigantic liar and a killer.
That story about gunning down two people, proudly telling the story about you killed two people who were carjacking him. I mean, look, man, it ain't true.
Yeah.
It's not like
there's
you know,
no evidence.
Right.
There's no evidence of the Katrina
The good thing
thing
about
either.
this show is that we can go a little further, but you read the press reports at it, and they're like, well, the cops in the region, they don't have any records of anything. The coroner doesn't, so it doesn't. Hey, man, he made it up.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
You don't kill two people in this, and no secret thing came over from DOD.
And nobody
special
knows anything that
Right,
they
nobody
did.
knows anything. Nobody knew these guys. Nobody knew it. So but it doesn't change the movie, and it doesn't change what I think to be this terrible position that we put our servicemen into. And then people like Sarah Palin and Sean Hannity, who make this country worse on a regular basis, refuse to change the dialogue, which forces us to, before every sporting event, again and again and again and again, to stand up and honor the men and women of the military. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And again, they use that phrase, they're protecting our freedoms over there. So they protect our freedoms far away so we can be free here at home, whatever the phrase is. And what it does is continually stifles conversation about whether we should be sending young men and women into harm's way to die and to kill others. Again, going back to that great John Kerry quote, it's one thing to serve your country and risk your life. It's something else to kill for your country, which is what Chris Kyle was forced to do and his friends were forced to do. And we're not allowed to have that conversation, and we keep...
It was shut down at the time.
It's continually shut down here because of course we should, no one thinks that the military shouldn't be honored, but we have a cycle of hero worship here in this country, which the danger that I think, and I think all of us here fear, is that it continues to to promulgate a culture where it's always going to be not just okay, but rah-rah to send people overseas to die and to kill other people. And we're completely afraid to break away from that culture. And when I go see the freaking Padres play the Brewers, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to say, yeah, it's okay to send 19-year-olds 7,000 miles away to kill and be killed.
People.
I don't think that's cool, but of course, Sean Hannity and Sarah Palin are going to say that I hate the troops. I'm afraid to even say this now. Like I'm already like I don't,
Yeah, this is the conversation that we're not allowed to have.
This is the conversation we're not allowed to have.
Although we're told that they go there to fight so that we can have conversations like this. I feel like we're exercising our freedoms.
Right, and these are
by
very
doing
complicated issues. I mean, I don't think that, the film itself it necessarily is directly related to what he talks about in the book, but just talking about the film itself, I think from what I glean from it, and from what I glean of people who have actually been in the military and been on active duty and have seen the film, there is a good representation of what it puts people through, that it basically it takes somebody who is, a normal average American kid to start with and then is put, as you said, in this impossible situation where they're asked to do extremely difficult things where even if you're a kid and you don't realize what you're doing is a very difficult thing, it will come back to you later.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't really get to have this conversation except here on the Young Turks, obviously, that it to me is shocking. And really, I'm quite disappointed about how we treat our veterans still after they come back.